Signing tomorrow. I think there's some over here, but I want to introduce you to my mother and father. Around the time of the Kennedy assassination, my parents' slugfest shifted into high gear. By then, I'd reached the age where duty required that I protect my mother with fists if need be, and throwing my body between my father's blind rage and her need to wear its markings had become a matter of less consequence than, say, stepping barefoot on a smoldering cigarette. One particularly bloody fracas, starting as an ordinary Saturday morning grocery run and ending up a front yard melee, left my mother nursing a broken arm and my father with 6 stitches over his eye. According to her, the break occurred when she, with a sack of groceries in the crook of each arm, got shoved to the ground. And when I caught up with the action, he was dragging her down the sidewalk, trailing canned goods and sandwich fixings in their wake, a dozen eggs and a jar of Miracle Whip lying cracked in the driveway. It was as if I'd sprinted onto the set of some preposterous sitcom. A handsome nutcase with a 12-pack of Cokes dangling from his free hand is hauling his wife off to God knows where, caveman style. And she's cursing their ill-mannered new neighbor who's ignoring her tongue lashing and idly slathering soap suds across the hood of his Pontiac. I was surprised to hear her aim pencil dick idiot at Clayton Poole, but thrilled she could verbally castrate a guy like that, showing some fortitude and presaging a kind of breakthrough. Realizing that my mother was drawing strength from her predicament, I held off jumping into the fray and was soon glad I had. For in the next instant, she made a move that would ultimately redefine her marriage. Denouncing Mr. Poole as a worthless sack of shit, she managed to scramble to her feet, pull a Coke loose, and cold cock my father with a blunt into the bottle, and as quick as that, their battle was over. As for the war, a scattering of skirmishes were yet to be waged, one minor dust-up coming as late as the summer of '66. But from that day on, the fire in their inferno was dwindling out. I've never been more proud of my mother than I was at that moment. My father gave the impression that he too was pleased, that he knew he had been bested and chosen to be magnanimous in defeat. Neither one of them knew what protocol followed a haymaker of that caliber, and they more or less milled around next to the street until it was clear their injuries necessitated crawling into the car and speeding off to the hospital. The calm after the storm, like the one at the Magnolia Gardens, which backstory is that they got into a public fight out at this honky-tonk, was very much to my liking. And I went about gathering up the scattered groceries at a leisurely pace. Eventually, I wandered indoors, pried the cap off a warm Coke, and drained its spewing sweetness in one long gulp. My mother's triumphant recount of the emergency room scene went like this. Son, I wish you could have seen your daddy at that hospital. There I was with my arm as crooked as a snake and him just a-bleeding. That doctor was trying to figure out what in the name of Pete happened to us, and your daddy's telling him about how we got in a bad car wreck. The nurse kept on looking at me like she knew this was a big bunch of malarkey, so I went on and told him that he was lying out his butt. I told the doctor that he was trying to strangle me to death, so I busted his head open with a Coke bottle. Your daddy turned whiter than a bed sheet. If he'd have jumped up and finished the job on me right there, it would have been worth it just to see the look on his face. He didn't say one word all the way back home.